What's up, Crumbleheads? I'm Devin Porter, the author of After the Crumble, which will be released this fall, coming fall 2014. Today I want to talk about an introduction, and I'm going to call this the introduction to everything, but this is going to serve as a general introduction to the concept of the crumble. I know a lot of you who are on the page have seen the FAQs that I posted, and of course I did one about the crumble. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth into that today. And as a general introduction to the video blog series that I'm going to be doing, there's two main themes that I'm going to be focusing on. One is themes related to the crumble, the machine, some of the things that are going on with the environment and things like that. And the second theme is going to be sustainability. I'm going to teach what I've learned so far about sustainable farming, permaculture, using different sorts of sustainable technologies and things like that. So, a lot of you probably saw the blueberry introduction that I did, and I try to teach people how to grow blueberries, and it'll be along that vein for that series of videos. But today we're gonna talk about the crumble. Some general warnings. As I get more comfortable on camera, I'm probably gonna curse a little bit, so that won't be safe for work or for kids or anything like that. Also, I say a lot. I say a lot. You'll get used to it. And one of the other things that you'll find is that you can find I'm a little bit hard on the sheep. You'll find that basically the way that I view it is one, the people that are watching, if you're actually watching this video, I'm assuming that you are awake to a general extent already. That's why you're here, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time on sort of sugarcoating it for the sheep that may be out there, and I'm not going to try to explain some of these general concepts. We're gonna skip over some of that stuff. So let's talk about the crumble, and let's go and let's start with the concept of the rise and fall of civilizations. And if we think about all the great civilizations that humanity has ever seen, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, all of these amazing civilizations that we have built, they have all, followed the same course. They reach their apex, and then they go into a general decline. And it takes them hundreds of years to decline. Rome took several hundred years to actually fall. And that could be considered a crumble too. When Rome fell, that was a crumble. It was not a collapse. It was a very slow decline. And we look at history and how these civilizations have risen and subsequently fallen. We start to see some certain hallmarks of what it is that they did that caused that. And in very, very easy terms, there wasn't enough food and there wasn't enough water. They outstripped their resources. They did the wrong kind of farming. They overused their land. And you think about the hallmarks of these great civilizations. You think about Rome today, or Greece today, or ancient Egypt, not ancient Egypt, but Egypt today. What do they all have in common? They're all deserts. Do you think that when they built the pyramid that it actually looked like that? That there was these sands of the desert around? Absolutely not. When they built those pyramids, that land was nice. That was actually usable land, and there was trees and rivers and all this kind of stuff around there. And they used up so much else out of their land that they created this situation, and desertification happened. And so we see that these civilizations that we have built as human beings, they rise and they fall because of that reason. And there's some other ones that we'll get to also, but that's one very fundamental one, is that civilizations over and over and over again have outstripped their resources. And industrial civilization is no different. We're doing exactly the same thing. We are outstripping our resources. And because of oil, and because of our access to this cheap energy in the form of oil and coal and natural gas, we've accelerated the process. We accelerated the rise, and unfortunately, we're going to accelerate the fall. And that's what we'll talk about today. So, industrial civilization will collapse faster. I believe that it has already begun. I would say 2006, 2007 is where we saw the first rumblings of the crumble. And you see it in the form of little mini oil shocks, and you see more violence around the world, and it just so happens that violence is taking place in countries that either have a lot of oil left or that have a lot of oil pipelines. You look at Iraq, they've got a lot of crude left, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the world. You look at Ukraine, tons of very important oil pipelines. Afghanistan, very important oil pipelines. So it's no coincidence that the Western powers are spending so much time in these countries, because we're all of the civilizations, the little mini pieces of this large industrial civilization are trying to grab what's left of the remaining oil, and we can watch that. We can watch it in the news. We can see it in our daily lives. We can see the crumble in our daily lives, and I know a lot of you all have seen it yourselves. Stuff costs more. Food costs a lot more. Inflation is much higher than these doctored government numbers will tell you. If we calculated inflation the same way today that we calculated it in 1980, it would be 10%. I think that's realistic, and I think a lot of you have seen that. Small things, stuff gets broken and doesn't get fixed. When's the last time you rode on an airplane? That seems to be a sort of a declining experience. You see a lot more people walking in towns and things like that. So, there's a lot of small things that we can see in the news and in our daily lives and all of that kind of thing that will show us that is the crumble. It's happening to us right now. And there's not going to be zombies at the door tomorrow. And I'll get to that in a minute about talking about preppers and how I really respect that mindset. But it's going to take a long time for this to happen. This is going to be a slow decline, probably over the rest of our lifetimes. Next 20 years, we're going to see just every year it's going to get a little harder. Things are going to get a little more expensive, a few more unemployed people. And then you've got the environmental damage that's starting to become apparent too, where, there are going to be people around the world that have difficulty getting access to fresh water over the next 20 years. Much harder time than they've had up until now. The population continues to decrease and the resources continue to get used up when you're talking about food, clean water, and energy. Those are the three things that we are using up at a rapid rate. And every day there's more people, there's more population. So that's the general concept. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about the crumble. And in the novel, I elaborate a lot more on that. And I tell you that through the story, of course, because the crumble, the novel, the fiction novel is based 20 years from now. So I talk a lot about what I think the world's going to look like at that point. Now, okay, let's get to that prepper concept. And I consider myself to be a prepper. And I love the prepper community. And what I'm trying to speak in particular to the prepper community, and there's other groups that I'll talk about in later videos, but today let's talk about the preppers because that relates directly to the crumble. And to have the concept of being a person that says, look, I want to be prepared for whatever situation may arise. I have a great respect for that, and I believe that myself. I personally believe that I'm prepared for as many things that I possibly can be prepared for. I was a Boy Scout. And I know a lot of people that are like that too. But let's talk about a lot of the things that the preppers individually prepare for. The mainstream media has hit us over the head with this, that most preppers only prepare for one thing. I'm not sure if that's the case, but let's talk about them one by one. You talk about an EMP. And an EMP is an electromagnetic pulse, for those who don't know, and there's two ways that it could happen. One could be man-made, and a nuke could explode in our atmosphere, and it would fry the electrical grid with the EMP that would create. And of course, Mother Nature might throw an EMP at us at a certain continent. And the way that she would do that is through what's called a coronal mass ejection. And it's basically an overgrown sunspot. And if it just so happened that we got one of these right when, that piece of the sun was facing our hemisphere, it just may happen. There's a small chance that if that happens, if a coronal mass ejection happens, that the power grid in that hemisphere might just go out. And then it would take a year and a half, 2 years to fix it. And we can go more into that later. But you look at the chances that an EMP might happen, and I would peg that at 5% over the next 10 years. So it is possible, and it's very smart to be prepared for it, but I don't think it's the only thing that people should be focused on. The Yellowstone volcano, yes, a very real possibility, very smart thing to be prepared for, but again, fairly minor chances that would happen. Especially over the next 10, 20 years of our lifetime. I think it's fairly minor, maybe 5-10% chance that we would see anything on that front. You talk about the New Madrid fault line. Yeah, smart thing to be prepared for. That could really cause a big ruckus. But again, small chances. A pandemic actually, fairly possible. 20%, 30%. Very smart thing to be prepared for. And of course, an economic collapse. And to me, that's tied up with the concept of the crumble. The crumble is a 30-year slow economic and environmental collapse. So, you take all of these things together, and it's very smart to be prepared for them. But the one thing that I think that we can be 95% certain of is that the crumble is happening and will continue to happen. The only thing I think that might prevent it, again, 95%. So there's that 5% that's out there that if we discovered clean cold fusion in the next 5 years, if we discovered some amazing new solar technology that's over and above what we've been able to do so far in the solar arena, that could potentially really slow things down. It could buy our civilization some time. But either way, here's the bottom line, is that as human beings, we found fossil fuels. And when we found them, we knew that they were finite. And we started building everything based on these fossil fuels anyway. And of course, it's hard to think that far ahead. 200 years ahead. In 200 years, we're going to run out of this stuff. But now, we're not 200 years away from running out of fossil fuels anymore. Now we're 20 to 40, depending on how you look at the numbers. So now we're really in a pinch as the human race. What do we do? Because we built this entire civilization, and you could look at the fossil fuel concept as a test for us. And we are spectacularly failing that test. We're taking fossil fuels when we could use these amazing resources we could be living on the moon right now. We could have terraformed Mars right now. And instead, we are shipping mangoes from Chile to Maine in the middle of winter. You know what I mean? And I could give 20 examples of frivolous ways that our civilization spends energy. And you'll find that I'm not a Luddite. I do agree that sometimes we do need these machines and these civilizations to propel us forward. I believe that it is the destiny of the human race to get to the stars, to spread. That's what we do. We explore new territory. It's in our very DNA. So I think that we are failing this test right now. I think we're massively, spectacularly failing the test of fossil fuels. But, okay, so now I've told you all that stuff. And a lot of you guys who are watching this have seen, you know, maybe you've seen The Collapse with Michael Rupert, or maybe you've read some of James Howard Kunstler's books, or Derek Jensen, or any of these guys. And in later blogs, I'll recommend some of these books. I really strongly recommend some of these. But a lot of times these guys that talk about this doom and gloom stuff, they tell you that it's really bad, and they tell you that the world is going to collapse. And then they say, thank you very much, goodbye, and they sign off. And you're sitting there going, oh, what do I do with this information? What do I do now? So here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. You know, and I call us crumbleheads. There was an FAQ on crumbleheads. For those of you who haven't read it, I would say go back and do that. We are crumbleheads. And what are we going to do with this, you know, terrible situation that we've been given? We've inherited this situation. What are we going to do? Well, we can build the civilization while our current industrial civilization is falling. We can build a civilization that is going to last 10,000 years, that can last 100,000 years. We can build a civilization that does not destroy the planet anymore, but that still keeps the things that make our civilization great, that still keeps equality, and that still keeps a respect for information and for knowledge and things like that. So we can keep the best and we can get rid of the worst. And I know that sounds very optimistic, but I'm an optimist in general. So, well, how do we do that? I'll do subsequent video blogs about that too. But today, let's just talk about one thing. There's a lot of pieces of technology that are sustainable, that are renewable, that we can keep. And we'll talk about those. But today I want to focus on farming. It's something that I know and love. I've been doing it myself for many years, and I've learned a lot along the way. Specifically talking about farming, it's one of the things that we can do, and a lot of you guys are already doing it. I see that, you know, some of the crumbleheads are talking about, you guys are already, you're aware of the problem that GMOs present, you're aware of the problems that monoculture presents, and I talk about that in the book too. Every civilization that has risen and every civilization that has fallen has engaged in monoculture. They have grown the same crop over and over and over again, year after year after year, in large, large spots, and they've taken out everything else. And they've got a million pieces of livestock over here, and the livestock destroy the land, and they've got a million pieces of corn and wheat over here, and that stuff strips the land of its nutrients. Monoculture destroys the land, and we've been doing it for 10,000 years as human beings, and we're banging our heads up against the wall. And we're going, why is this not working? How come when we farm like this 150 years later, and I know that seems like a long time, but we're at the tail end of this process now. 100 years later, 150 years later, the soil is dry, the soil becomes sand, it's like dust. We're sucking out the nutrients and we're not putting it back in. So here's one thing, here's one piece of optimistic thing, and then I'll sign off. I think that's a pretty good introduction to the problem. But here's one very optimistic thing that I can give you, is that we now know how to farm. We know how to produce food off of the land without destroying it. And the way that we know how to farm, and I'll do subsequent videos on teaching this exact thing, and a lot of you already know it, we can do it now. We can do what our civilization has been trying to do for thousands of years. We now know how, and so we have the capability and we have the tools. So what we're going to do is we're all going to get together and we're going to start teaching more people, and we're going to grow, and we're going to do all these wonderful things. So in signing off, you know, the bad news is the crumble is real, the crumble is here, and the crumble will continue throughout the rest of our lifetimes. Next year's going to be harder than this one, in some ways. But the good news is we have the tools to fix it, and we have the energy and the youth to fix it. And a lot of the people that I know that I've met are very exciting people, and I'll bring some of them on different videos that teach us how to do different things. But so I want to end this on an optimistic note, just like what I did with the blueberries. We can fix this, and this is our time, and it's time for us to take power. And the corporations and the governments are now one giant machine, and I'll do another video blog about the machine. I did an FAQ on it, but we'll talk about the machine. But we built this machine, and we can take it down, and we broke the environment, and we can fix it. So that's my bottom line, is that this can be fixed, and we're going to do it. Thank you very much for watching, Crumbleheads. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.